Hello, my name is Daniel. I'm here to help you with the challenge I've been struggling with for much of my adult life. I've made some significant breakthroughs, which is how to shift from shadow work to shadow dancing. Today I'm going to teach you critical insight and how you can live a significantly better life by fully embracing all of yourself. People typically isolate, repress a broad range of your own personality. This extends from active dreams that you held, and you never fulfilled. And when you push that part of yourself down by rejecting or not pursuing those dreams, there's an element of yourself that is resenting you. It's struggling for your attention. It's undermining the things you do try to do because it still wants to put into effect the dreams you once shared. And this also includes aspects of yourself that have never been conscious. Needs, wants, desires that you haven't been able to come to terms with. They're outside your consciousness, but they were never really fully in your consciousness within this lifetime. Today, I'm going to help you learn how to embrace these two kinds of your shadow. And as you embrace them, you must learn to dance. First, here's why it makes sense to listen to me a bit. I'm going to tell you a story. You're going to understand the kind of challenges you are facing, what you might need to do in order to handle them well, and where it leads, because this story doesn't end once you get to the other side of this part of the challenge. When I was 24, I had a lucrative job in the financial district of New York City. It was so nice that it was listed in the top 10 employers in New York. And my friends laughed about the fact that I got this job. I was kind of underqualified, and it was amazing that I was in this position. And yet I was miserable. I'd had the job for over half a year, and I was unable to do well. I didn't like it, and it was worse because I didn't understand why I didn't like it. I'd gotten the job in the spring, and Thanksgiving came around, and I was staying at my grandparents'. The house was full, so I was sleeping on the couch downstairs, and I had to get up to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night. I did. On my way to the bathroom, I passed the door to the basement. Now, I'd always been afraid of this basement, and it hadn't really left me as a fear, even as an adult. It was a big space with multiple rooms, and they were full of stuff, junk from many perspectives. My grandpa had saved everything. Anything that could seem to be valuable became a pile, and there was a lot of space to pile stuff up, and I had no idea what was down there. Well, I was 25, and I was sick of it. I smoked some cannabis by the window. Cannabis is medicine for fear under many circumstances, and at the time, it felt like a really good idea. And when I walked to the bathroom and past this door, I felt a well of courage within me say, I'm sick of this fear, and I'm going to go face it now. I walked down those stairs, and I refused to turn on the light. It took me an eon, must have been 20 minutes, just to get down the stairs. Every step was brutal on a level that I could barely recognize tangibly. I began to lose feeling in my body as the sensations became so strong. I stepped down and began sitting on the stairs and determining to take one more step, seated, scooching, as soon as I could. One by one, I moved the way down, and I felt a presence. Terror, terror. Terror is different than fear. Terror is what happens when you begin to feel yourself torn apart. The sensations are so strong that your body either isn't there at all or might as well not be, because sensation is entirely centered in energy. Terror began to rip me apart. I could barely breathe. And somehow I was taken into a space in my awareness that I had not known. I knew it, and yet had never known it. That was the experience. My conscious mind had lost all ability to connect in this way. But in that exact moment, I learned that it was a loss, that I had once known how to be more aware in these ways. I was being returned to a depth of awareness that was somehow deeply familiar, and yet I didn't know from where. And I knew that I was with a genuine presence. I felt it. I felt it like it could eat me. And in that moment, my existence was entirely shifted into this spiritual, energetic space without even having the words for what that was. And I stared into it. I refused to back away. I don't know where the courage came from, but I knew I had to do this. I knew I had to stay with it, even though all I could do was barely focus on my breathing. And I stared into this presence, which was like right in front of me. And I burst into tears. And I said out loud, "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." And it all evaporated. Everything changed. I was back in my body. I moved down the stairs and I began to slowly step around the basement, and almost all the fear was gone. I determined I wouldn't allow any of it to remain, so I went and visited every corner of the basement that I could reach, and I danced. I loved dancing then, and I felt the power, the shamanic presence, even though I didn't have those words at the time. I just somehow knew that by moving my body in this living way, I was refusing to allow the fear to take me over. And in fact, I wanted to dance in every corner, in every space where the fear could hide. By the end of the night, I had visited every space, and I rewarded myself by turning on all the lights. And having spent several hours in the darkness dancing, I turned on all the lights and showed myself what was there, and it was absurd. I mean, there were shelves in every recess, sticking into what would be aisles, covered in bits of metal and cans that were clearly well past their date of adequate consumption. There were piles, heaps of junk, mortar, bricks, broken bricks, machines that were beyond all hope of real repair, or certainly looked that way. And then, having seen every corner with light, I recognized that I had essentially brought light to these corners with my dance before I used the electricity. That the power of my presence glowed from within, such that the fear could no longer consume me, embodying as terror. And I turned all the lights off, and I sat. And I sat until, several of the little windows in the edge of the space lit up with the morning light. That marked a turning point in my life. Over the course of the next 15 years, I faced every major fear that I knew, all of them. And I thank that time, that event, for the experience, for the ability to maintain the courage to do so. A simple understanding that is critical to recognizing the difference between shadow work and shadow dancing. Shadow work means you're looking intentionally into the repressed and unconscious aspects of yourself that are a part of you and are already influencing your life. They're sapping your strength as they attempt to shift your attention from one focus to another. When you remain unconscious of these forces, you are that much less capable of dealing with them well. And thus they'll push you around. They'll influence you, often in negative ways, because they don't particularly care about your intentional priorities. And they want you to do something else. When you commit to working, to becoming present, to becoming aware of these parts of yourself, you are that much more able to deal with them intentionally. And thus, you're no longer sideswiped or unconsciously sabotaging yourself. And ideally, you learn to shift into collaborating, learning to recognize the true gifts within your shadow and teaching them to be your ally and even your friend. In order to do this, you have to shift from work into dancing. Everything I've said so far is essentially work. You have to work to bring conscious awareness into facing those parts of yourself that you've hidden from or perhaps never understood to begin with. Once you know them, you have to learn to dance. And there is a critical and simple understanding that's going to make this possible. There's an ability we have to align our consciousness with reality, and it involves embracing the rhythms of the world that are beyond our control. There are two basic rhythms that influence this dramatically. One is the moon, and the other is the Earth's seasons. When the moon is dark, we are more capable of tuning in to the unconscious dark forces within ourselves. The moon is our collaborator during these times, as she essentially removes her light and puts us in a position to harmonically resonate, to be in tune with those forces that we've been hiding from. Thus, when you know that it's closing in on the new moon, you can also become intentionally aware that you are going to be more capable of tuning into your shadow during these times. Similarly, the cycles of the seasons drive this process on a more exaggerated level. Thus, during the shortest days, wherever you live, in the winter, when the daylight is least present, you are much more capable of being in tune with your shadow. And thus, by recognizing that the shortest days and the shortest day in particular is the highlight, is the key moment in which you can say hello and dance with your shadow. You do it on purpose. When you do it on purpose, you kind of recognize you have a date. You have a date to dance. And when you approach this intentionally and with a little air of mystery, intrigue, and even hope, you're going to be far more competent. You're going to handle it in a way that unleashes this power, because ultimately your shadow is your own power. Your shadow is the repressed power that you haven't learned to work with yet. And even when it reflects the worst, desires that are terrifying, rages that are unacceptable, even when it embraces such awful feelings, you can be present with the sense that some of your power is there. It is your job, not simply to say no, because saying no might just push it back into the shadows, but to say yes in a way that's dancing and yet refusing to relinquish control in a way that is unacceptable. And as you engage this challenge, you will find that there is much hidden in your shadow that is beautiful, that you need. You have, for many reasons, associated negative feelings with unacceptability, and there's often a distinction Some negative feelings are unacceptable. You can't kill people. You can't steal from them. Even hatred itself is not okay. And yet the root forces beneath these instincts are often crucial to you. You need to recognize why you might react strongly against different people or different circumstances. And if you simply disregard your reactions because they come in a form that is too excessive, nasty, or hateful, well then you're going to lose the core power within that. In fact, you will lose the ability to recognize that often what we know of as terrible sides of ourselves are a real distinction, or a part of us that's really saying, this is not okay. I do not accept this circumstance. There is something better. If you simply say no to rage within yourself, you might never learn to recognize that rage is coming from a place that is seeing incredible beauty that could be quite healthy. There might be beauty, there might be power, there might be magic, there is love. There is love within you that you have repressed because it is tangled up in these dramatic and painful feelings. And there is no way to liberate it and reunite with this part of yourself unless you commit to dancing. The best time to dance is during the dark moon and the dark earth. The dark days, the dead of winter, are a time to dance, to embrace the sense that the repressed sides of yourself and the unconscious hope are waiting to be unleashed. And if you first look inside yourself and commit to embracing whatever strength and power are genuinely grounded in love, you're going to dance in a way that makes your life so much more beautiful. I learned that by owning my own shadow, I no longer gave it away. And this is the critical lesson. This is not a how-to video. Perhaps we can talk in the future about how to do this. I'm simply telling you what is necessary. I learned that when we repress a part of ourselves, when I repressed a part of myself, I would encounter something that mirrored that to me in the world. And when I encountered in the world, what I was seeing was a true reflection of the entirety of the energy involved. Thus, if you get in a fight and you think you're the good guy, and yet it's really mixed circumstances, you're going to see someone who mirrors to you both of those things, the hero and the villain, because you are both. When you cut yourself off from the truth of the things you're afraid of in yourself, you also cut yourself off from the truth of the beauty within you, because they are invariably woven together, which is what makes it so necessary to dance with them. You must dance in the spaces you fear the most. In my experience, this must be a dance. It goes well beyond the work that many people refer to when they talk about unearthing and facing and being honest about your shadow. And make no mistake, that's extremely necessary, and it is work that you can do pretty much whenever you need to, or at least begin and contribute to. But the best times to face your shadow are not up to you. That's part of the fear. That's part of the challenge. This extends beyond your control. You can't control this. But you can recognize that you have a date. During the dark phase of the moon, which happens 12 or 13 times a year, and during the dark days of the year, the solstice, when there is the least light and the most darkness, this is when your shadow is most present, it's closest. And if you treat it as something to look forward to, a time when you will learn to dance, you will have much more success in learning to come to terms with the truth, learning to remain strong and present in the face of the parts of yourself that you have resisted or hidden. And in the process, you will learn to maintain your strength, say no to the unacceptable desires, emotions, hatreds, resentments, angers, and terrors. Say no to them. You're dancing with them, but you're not giving in to them. You're not giving control to the shadow. You're dancing with it. You're learning its rhythms. You're learning to continue to create your light, the light of your soul within you, generated in the face of your shadow. Doesn't give in, but it does learn the rhythms. It does re-embrace the strengths you've hidden from, or lost, or never even known yet in this lifetime. And it will take you beyond everything you have known to be you, and it will take you beyond the edge of your identity in this lifetime. And there is no other way. There is no other way to be at peace with yourself. This dance is waiting for you at the edge of what you've known, and you have a date during the darkest days. I invite you to keep it.